All right, everyone, let's get started. My name is SOHEJL, I'm with TeachMeDeFi, and today we'll talk about user experience. Something that probably all of us in this room have struggled with in crypto at some stage, let's be honest, right? And today is about making sure that this doesn't keep happening and we create user experiences which are pleasant across Web3 and across the Polkadot ecosystem. And for that, we have some amazing panelists on today who are tackling exactly that. So I suggest we start with a quick intro round. Perhaps we start with you, DJ, and then we take it from there.
Hey everyone, thank you for coming here. I'm DJ, I'm research lead at Subwallet. And Subwallet is a user-friendly, non-custodial wallet for the Polkadot ecosystem that is available on browser extension, mobile app, and web dashboard.
Hey everyone, Alex, co-founder of Braille, which is a Web3 UX UI agency. And we've also initiated this UX movement, if I could say so, like with the UX Guild and as well pushing for the UX Bounty that just got approved not so long ago. So very excited to be there.
Hello everyone, my name is Anton. I'm CEO of Novasama Technologies. We build high-quality Polkadot applications. We have Nova Wallet, which is leading mobile wallet for the Polkadot. We have Telenova, which is a self-custodial wallet, which is built inside of Telegram. We have Nova Spectre, which is enterprise desktop application for the Polkadot. And finally, we have a Polkadot Vault, which is hardware wallet for any subset-based network.
Hi everyone, my name is NINO. I'm a CPO at a project called Apillon. Apillon is a Web3 development platform which is abstracting away the complexities of building on-chain, specifically on Polkadot. We provide very simple APIs, SDK, CLI, which are mimicking Web2 development, as well as no-code or click-based solutions. So anyone can test out and really start building fast.
All right, lovely. Perhaps we started off with, why is user experience considered quite bad in crypto still? What are the reasons for that? What are the reasons you see in the space for that? Perhaps we start with you and then we go through.
Yeah, I think looking back into Web 2 and comparing it to Web 3, which is based off blockchain, we cannot go beyond the fact that blockchain is immutable. And this immutability will always introduce a lot of friction because if a user makes a mistake, it is impossible to fix it. So we are now standing in the precipice where UX needs to be able to handle these situations. And of course, the other part is that blockchain obviously comes with a lot of innovations, with a lot of new concepts. And until we're able to either improve the UX or teach the users, or both is probably the solution, this is how long we'll have problems. We also have to take in account that Web 2 is in development for, 20 years or even more. So the current state of Web 2 isn't the state how Web 2 started. So it will probably be the same for Web 3.
Yeah, I think I'll just select one issue across like several that exist for the UX in Web3, and for me it will be the learning curve of understanding what Web3 is and how to use the products, and which implies another issue, which is a mental barrier. So even if you started to use the Web3 apps, there are a lot of uncertainties which basically prevents you of using Web3 apps, right? So you need to constantly learn it, and it's quite often when the applications, like wallets, the apps, they're not putting a lot of efforts in order to make the UX very seamless, right? Which then affects your journey as a user.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off what Nino and Anton has said. I think this is a relatively new industry, and there is a lot of mental concept that has to be, relearned from the Web 2 world. And since it's new, there's, we always start with infrastructure and then abstract things away gradually. So I think that's the reason why the UI is not very friendly right now, but that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah, and just to conclude on that, and just to put like maybe a scope on Polkadot, is that as well there is this fragmentation that is really everywhere, and that's something that creates a lot of friction for the user, because each protocol or each parachains, they have to relearn C over type of buttons and stuff, and that's something that we can definitely improve.
Right. That's something I wanted to touch on, which is Polkadot is a multi-chain ecosystem, right? So is multi-chain UX harder? Like, does it introduce certain complexities which just make it more difficult to create a nice user experience? And if so, what are those?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously like trying to do an experience that is as good on a multi-chain compared to just a solo chain, you know, like on Solana, it makes everything harder because there are many more actors, and like many people with great minds are like, we are going to go in this direction while another will go in this direction. And all of this, we need to find consensus, right? And when you are in a multi-chain, that's really the hardest thing is like, which team has the best solution for the user? And as of today, we are still not getting this consensus. So yeah, I would say ultimately multi-chain is harder, but I don't think it's impossible, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite obvious that if you have to collaborate more actors, it's always more difficult than just having everything on a single interface, right? And I think that's the problem that we have originally with Polkadot, because it's a lot of fragmentation, right? You want to move to this chain to do DeFi, you want to move to that chain to do GameFi or Metaverse or NFT and whatnot. So definitely it's harder, and it's a challenge. And that's what we have been trying to solve with Subwallet, actually, right? How do you make the multi-chain asset management as if you're on one chain? And how do you do it like with the straightforward portfolio, approach? So I think, yes, the answer is it is harder. It is a challenge. But the key point is people are there to solve that.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it's also hard to quantify how harder it is to build a multi-chain wallet compared to the single-chain wallet. It's not like you multiply the amount of chains. It's not like 100 times harder. It's not twice as harder, right? It's just a completely different experience. And I think the issue is that once you start to dive into the topic, who are your users, who is going to use this multi-chain app, it's just like it starts to divide in the separate categories, and each of them, they want to see multi-chain differently, right? And so you as a wallet need to make actions towards leaning one approach or another.
Yeah, maybe just to close this down, it is also valuable to mention that as we started in crypto, we had basically one asset that would go from point A to point B. And as users finally kind of conquered this, we figured out the underlying infrastructure has to change so that we are able to scale, which means we introduced multiple chains or interoperability, which now brings additional parameter. Like if we look at concrete UI, it's not enough to select asset and say where you're sending it, but now you have additional parameters, which are chains, parachains, or something else. So this is the root of the problem. The initial architecture that we designed was not optimal. So now we have to follow up.
You mentioned wallets. I think that's a good topic for UX as well, because it's kind of, for new users, it's the first starting point, the first touch point, which they have to deal with. You can use them, you can lose them already there, or it can be too confusing. So this question is probably for you two, DJ and Anton. So what do you guys do so that that experience for new users is pleasant and they're onboarded like effectively?
Yeah, I would start that basically two things, right, that I can shortly cover on this. Onboarding and utility, right? Both of them, they have a lot of steps for the completely new person in the ecosystem. For example, onboarding. You have to, well, you don't have to, but you usually introduced by the wallet to the concept of the passphrases, right? You have to store them privately, never share, and it's just the 12 words. It's never been met in the Web 2 by the user, right? So this is a learning curve. This is a lot of factors for them to basically consume, understand, and master right? The second thing, I will take an example of the staking on the Polkadot, right? In a nutshell, you need to either understand who validator is, how to select them, start staking, then monitor. Also a lot of process, right? Or with an nomination pool, it's pretty much the same, right? So the goal of the No Wallet last year was to basically reduce onboarding, reduce the staking to one-click operation, right? So you now can onboard to the No Wallet through your Google or Apple account. This is an option for the new users. Passphrases are still there as a most secure option. And the staking is just like one-click experience. You enter amount, you press stake, that's done, right? So I think this is one of the directions which we can apply for the multi-chain as well, which implies that we need to have a possibility to do a lot of stuff in the background for the user, but we need to do it reliably because, again, this is a blockchain, this is immutable, you cannot reverse it, right? So this would be, in my understanding, the next challenge.
Yeah, I think the approach is pretty much the same, you know. Reducing friction for users, telling them, hey, if you create an account, if you import an account, all the assets are there. You can transfer, you can buy more, you can swap in-app, you can earn not just with native staking, but with liquid staking. That's the direction that we are going towards. So basically, like asking ourselves and asking users as well, what do you need, right? What do you want to do? What do you want to do less? Right? Rather than just going on multiple dApps to do a lot of staking, you can just do it in one interface with like very straightforward UX. But I also agree with you in a sense that less friction is not always the best option, right? You have to, you know, put warnings somewhere like, hey, if you do this, you might lose your money. Hey, you should be able to understand, not at the protocol level, but at the conceptual level, like, hey, this is not as easy as you think it is. It is not as simple as you think it is. You might, you know, want to do a little bit of education on this before you participate. So I think balancing the two things, right? Reducing friction, but to an extent that you want users to understand what they're actually getting into. Yeah.
Speaking of warnings, which you mentioned, maybe let's talk about standardization a bit. I think that'll be a good topic with the panelists here. Because when we had you on our podcast and we talked about all the different kinds of warnings that the wallets give out and they differ. So to a user, it's always like looking different across different wallets. So that would be something regarding standardization. So just can standardization help in creating better user experiences here?
So maybe just before talking about standardization is like, what is standardization, right? And what we've discussed that as well privately is that it's a fact of like best practices that a whole industry accept as a consensus and say, yeah, this is our standard, right? And as of today in crypto, there are some, but not enough, right? And as we've talked right now, like the fragmentation is why, for example, there is no standardization. And so I think that once we reach this level of like, for example, like sending a token, it's like the same way on every wallet or every app. The name of the buttons, like just sending token or swapping token. What is the difference, you know, between for the user? And like again, we have to put ourselves in the user's shoes, because we've been in the ecosystem for years, and so it's kind of like natural for us. But for somebody like, let's say your parents, you know, if they read swap token, what is swap token, you know? And those are type of very small standard that we need as an ecosystem to agree on and to say like, this is the best experience we want to offer. And that's how we build standards. I don't know if somebody wanted to.
Perhaps Anton, do you want to say something about it?
I would say that for me personally, we need to define what standard is, right? But overall, the topic is arguable for me. What I don't want to see the standards for the UX is the constraints, right? I want to still remain the freedom as a product designer to still be able like define the UX for the people, still make sure that it's very convenient, still make sure that it's super easy, but I still want to have this freedom in order that each product has something individually, right? Some characteristics, right? So this is definitely where the standards needs to be really, really, really thought and defined to not limit other product builders, right? So we need to tackle issues with the standards on a level that will not break the freedom for the product teams.
Nino, you had an interesting take earlier when we spoke about this. Do you want to say about that as well, in terms of consensus and defining standards with a Polkadot DAO, so to say?
Yeah, so when we are talking about standards, obviously there are quotation marks in the air. We all know that what are standards and that there are bodies which are able to issue or sign off standards where everyone is then using them. But in a context of Web3, what we want to avoid is a user interacting with two different DEXs, for example, and relearning the UI or relearning the flow. For example, a good sample from everyday use is Command S or Control S to save a file, which is true across the board. It works in Windows, it works on Mac, and it works in every software that is able to save something, right? It works in Photoshop, it works in Notepad. So we do have such examples which are not necessarily standards, but users expect them, right? So I would say we need to find a path to define this, to unify the experience. And this also brings a lot of release for, let's say, you have two DEXs, and now they have a standard, so they can focus on something else. They just standardize the UI. They can, how to say, account that a user who entered the first DEX and then came here, the flow is already there. They already know it. So this is how I see standardization and how we should introduce it. We could also implement DAO, which votes on specific standards, and it's a body within Polkadot or within Web3, which says we have a good reason to believe that this standard or this UI will unify the experience and bring users quicker to the result they're trying to achieve.
Right, right. And are there other initiatives or approaches you guys are working on regarding user experience? Because it's not just interfaces, right? It goes beyond that. It can be hardware. It can be just like the journey of a user socially. So, for example, I know you guys teased something with a card, like a Polkadot card. I don't know if you want to talk about that a bit. Yeah, how you think, like, are there other initiatives and approaches you'd like to highlight?
Yeah,
Give us the alpha.
Come join our talk tomorrow. I think it's 2 p.m. Impact stage, but please clarify in the schedule. No wallet talk about staking and elevating on the next level. But in general, yes, right now we're focused also on the payment layer, just like there was a presentation by Bjorn, right, with the Polkadot app, and there was the pay feature introduced. So I think this is a very crucial one, because if you think about the UX, right, and I just mentioned it, right, the people have the learning curve on the onboarding. The people have the learning curve on the utility in the Web3, right? And the thing is that our mental capacity as a human beings, it's very limited, right? And as soon as we understand there is something very complex, we basically, our brain always lean to easy stuff, right? And if it sees a complex stuff, if there is like nothing behind it or nothing like super available, our brain is going to reject it and deny it, right? So that's why we need to minimize the barriers. As I mentioned, like we minimize the onboarding barrier, we minimize the staking barrier, and now what you're going to do with your staking rewards, right? So unless you have a clear way of understanding that this is not some magic coins in your mobile application, this is not going to work, right? So you need to show the clean, clear pathway of utilizing these magic coins so that they will stop being magic coins and they will turn into what they are, right? Which is like a payment utility is one of the cases. So the next challenge would be to tackle all this complexity and provide the easy solution for the payment. So the Polkadot presented their vision on it. Novasama is going to present it, our own vision tomorrow.
Lovely. Nino, perhaps you can talk about how you are trying to simplify access to credibly decentralized services. So basically, the services of the parachains to enterprises that might be interested to implement them, but not like, make it easy for them to do that.
Yeah, sure. So if we look at Polkadot and its parachains, you can really quickly see that parachains are very use case specific. They are solving a specific problem, and they're doing it on-chain. They're doing it within Web3 on a protocol level. And a developer can approach any of those parachains, spend some time or a lot of time, configure them into a dApp, and utilize them. But this investment can be quite big, and it's very hard to maintain the solution because parachains are still growing, and it's still a period of innovation and changes. So what we're doing is basically transforming a parachain, whatever they're doing, into a service, and we are mimicking how you would build or develop something in Web 2. So basically, if you are dragging and dropping a file into our software, what we do is we go to Crust, parachain, we pin the file, we send it to IPFS, and we are able to either not charge you, or if you're using a lot of files, we're able to charge you with your credit card. So basically, we also treat the underlying payments. You do not have to have Crust tokens. You do not have to have any other tokens, which is also a huge friction because you are unable to build turnkey solutions. So if you're a developer and you put your dApp out there, and every action costs some tokens on chain, you need to take care of your wallets and constantly fill them in, etc. So we are solving this all in a one single package.
Let's talk about the UX bounty, Alex. I know that's a big topic for you and for the ecosystem. I think it would be interesting for you to tell us a bit about it and where things are headed.
Yeah, the UX bounty currently has been approved. The next milestone we need to do is like getting the curator approved, but we are looking for mid-August, September to be fully operational. And the main goal of this bounty, right, and like you've seen it, like we've talked about it, like there are so many ways to tackle UX, and it might be easy for the project to tackle their own UX of the project, but when we talk about a full ecosystem, like this fragmentation that we talked about, it's like, how do we make sure that we not only structure our strategy, but as well like optimize our effort, right? Because there are so many teams that are willing to work on this and making the experience better on Polkadot, but without a common strategy, it's very hard. And that's basically what is trying to do this UX bounty, is by providing a budget for the ecosystem to let people work in parallel with a with a single vision, which is improving the user experience, right? But at the same time, providing this common strategy, to avoid this fragmentation that we've seen like since the beginning of Polkadot, which have been like project going in their own direction. And so, yeah, very excited for this UX bounty. Again, like this is a community initiative, so if there is anyone that has like UX issues, or even if they have the expertise to work on some of those UX, you guys can reach out. Maybe, I don't know if we can put that in the live or somewhere, but there is a UX guild as well that is on Telegram. And if you guys look on the forum, there is a lot of talk about the UX, so just don't be shy. There is a lot of work to do, and we welcome everyone with some expertise in UX.
Lovely. Right. I mean, are there any questions perhaps from the audience? Because UX affects us all. So if you have any questions, perhaps up here with the mic.
How big is the bounty? How much dot is it?
I don't have the exact number. I have the number in dollars, which is $500,000. So it's about 67,000 dots, I think. Yeah. But just so everybody is aware, I think 500,000 is first a proof of concept, right? It's like, can community gather around and create a real good impact on the experience? But then once we get to see the deliverables we are able to do, I think we will propose a bounty version too, you know.
Anyone else? No? All right, well, thank you guys so much for coming on stage and sharing your expertise. Perhaps we'll leave you with this. When you leave this conference and you learned about a project that you liked and you still remember it, even though you're hungover from the closing party, then perhaps go home and use the application. Check it out, see is it pleasant, is it confusing to you, and give that feedback to the team so they can implement that feedback, and perhaps we can create together an environment that users like to use. Thank you for having us.